This is Jamie Michael, a massage therapist and former Royal Marine who recently found himself prosecuted by the country he risked his life to protect. His crime was to post a video on Facebook of himself criticising left-wing politicians for allowing illegal immigration and not keeping British children safe. He also expressed concern about Islamic extremism and radicalised idiots. None of this sounds remotely criminal, but Jamie was reported to the police, and incredibly, it was on the orders of one of the left-wing politicians he was criticising, Labour MP Buffy Williams. So a politician reported a peaceful political dissident to the police, and the police went along with it, and then the legal system and the courts helped her to persecute him, although thankfully this week a jury found him not guilty. Jamie was charged with stirring up racial hatred, although it wasn't exactly clear what race because he didn't mention one. I'll show Jamie's video in a moment, but first a bit of context. This was right after the Southport attack, in which British girls were stabbed to death by Axel Muganwa Rudakabana, who, depending on whether you believe the establishment narrative or not, is either the 100% British, 100% Christian choir boy shown here with no particular motive, who was nothing but a vector for evil Amazon knife deliveries, or the second generation Rwandan migrant who said Britain needs a white genocide, shown here, who was radicalised by far left decolonial and anti-white rhetoric and his own genocidal background. Jamie's story was quite a normal one. Many people were charged over pretty tame social media posts in the wake of the Southport attack, and many of the allegations against them were politically motivated. What is different is that Jamie pleaded not guilty, and it took a jury just 17 minutes to find him not guilty. However, because he pleaded not guilty, he was held on remand in prison for 20 days until his trial. When it was obvious that he was innocent, why did the judge order him to be held on remand? This case reveals a lot about how the left-wing state weaponizes the criminal justice system to punish people with opinions the state doesn't like, even when those opinions are totally valid. In the aftermath of the riots, a suspiciously high number of people pleaded guilty, which hints at the disturbing collusion between the state, the judges, and the state-appointed lawyers, the duty solicitors, who are provided to defendants in criminal cases when they don't have their own lawyer. And it shows how hate speech laws are so vague that they can be used against anyone, regardless of what they've said. Because Jamie was found not guilty, I can show his video so you can see for yourself what he was prosecuted over.
Politicians and say, you dare do this, and we will hold you personally responsible. If anything happens to our little ones, we will hold you personally responsible. It's down to our council and our politicians and our police to keep us safe. And if they're not doing their job, we will do the job. We need men now, guys. We need real men to start stepping up, okay, and facing this situation. We need to start facing this situation, which means making plans. And like I said, having meetings, going to the politicians, going to the police, going to the councillors, and demanding that this doesn't happen, okay? This isn't a freak incident. This is going to happen more and more and more, okay? These people now think that there's enough numbers for them to start taking over our country, and they're telling us. They think they're going to take over our country. Well, they're not. We still outnumber them about 10 to 1, right? So anybody saying, oh, the country's gone, it's gone because of people like you saying it's gone, okay? We outnumber them 10 to 1. You need to start acting like a man, standing up, and like I said, organising, okay? Which doesn't mean getting bats and knives and stuff and going doing what they're doing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about doing things the right way. Getting in big groups, having meetings, and going to the council, going to the police, and going to the politicians, okay? And making sure these things happen. And if they don't happen, okay, then the council, the police and everything are asking for trouble, because they're going to move these people in here, and then we will see trouble. Because these people, I'm telling you now, these people are being told to cause chaos, right? And you can see it happening now all across Britain. We haven't got much time left, guys. We're in another 5 years, I reckon, and this country will be gone. It will be gone then. But the people who are saying it's gone now are the ones who want to sit back, watch Love Island, and start saying, oh my God, look at this, oh my God, look at that, without doing nothing to defend your children and defend your way of life against these scumbags that are coming into our country. Right, our country ain't gone. It's gone if you let it go, but our country ain't gone. It's about time you stood up and started doing something and stopped taking a piss out of people like me who are trying to raise awareness to it. Get off your arse, get to a Tommy Robinson bloody protest, or start doing stuff around here ourselves, okay? We need to get on top of this situation before it gets on top of us, right? Time we started grouping together, time we started having plans, okay? Having plans for God knows what can happen, okay? Because I can tell you now, these people will start grouping together. Bigly, massively. These people will start grouping together, okay? And we need to have plans for all sorts of scenarios, okay? What if these people get guns, okay? What if they do? We need to start planning for that, right? These are the things that they are telling us. They are telling us they're going to take over. How are they going to take over? How are they going to take over? We need to start talking about it. Right, guys? Anyway, I hope a few of you listen to this video and then get in touch with me, because we do definitely need a meeting about all this anyway. It's you know, they're going to target schools, guys. I'm telling you now, they're going to target the most vulnerable. They're going to target our kids, right? And we need to start getting together and talking about it. All right. Like I said, I think we should need some kind of security on the schools now these days, right? That person who stabbed in them schools, he wasn't even from that area by the sounds of it, right? So they could come in from afar. We need people to be, their schools need to be monitored on the front gates, and all sorts of other things as well. You know, I think we should have security in parks and all sorts, right? And just be vigilant, guys, because these fucking psychopaths are going to start targeting the kids, and in all sorts of, that was a dance class. That was a Shania Twain dance class. They could go anywhere, guys. They could go anywhere. We need to be on our toes, and people need to be ready to react. I hope people ain't going to, if they see some people getting stabbed in front of them, I hope they're not going to run. Okay, you need to be mobbing these people in big numbers. You need to be jumping on their back and stopping what's happening, not running away. Okay? These are the things we need to be talking about. Anyway, I've just been really getting upset over the last couple of days looking at what's happening, because I've seen it coming for a long time, whilst we have done nothing about it, okay? Most people are not even complaining about it, right? You're not a racist to say anything. You're a concerned citizen for your kids, and that's it. Oh, come on, guys, we got a bloody job to do, and that's looking after our families, all right? Let me know if you're interested, guys, and we'll start getting together.
So the state thought that was worth prosecuting someone over? I wonder if it's really because they thought he'd committed a hate crime, or if it was actually because he criticised them and they wanted to silence him and send a warning to anyone else. In the video, Jamie actually provides some very relevant context. He talked about incidents prior to the Southport riots that showed how the police have a soft touch with rioters if they think there's a chance someone might call the police racist. Last summer, there were Roma riots in Leeds after authorities tried to take a child into care. A mob of Muslims attacked Rochdale police station because they were angry that Muslim men had been apprehended after attacking a female police officer. And there was the stabbing of an army officer, Mark Teaton, outside his house. And there was a machete fight in Southend-on-Sea. Bear in mind the Leeds riots were people rioting against the state because it had taken a child into care to protect the child. And the Manchester riots were against the police because the police arrested Muslim men who'd attacked a female police officer. So those riots got a light touch. But when people are angry about children getting stabbed and killed in Southport and British people riot, then it's far-right thuggery, and the full force of the state is brought against them. Jamie also questioned details of the Southport murder, speculating that the then unnamed suspect had come from a migrant family and had been radicalised. The government caused this speculation by not releasing information about the attacker, and when they did release information, they said he was a British Christian choir boy, which is kind of deceitful. I think most people would find Jamie's speculation closer to the truth than the official government line. Jamie urged viewers to act, but not with violence. He said, go to the councillors, go to the police, go to the politicians. You need to start standing up and organising, which doesn't mean getting bats and knives and stuff and going and doing what they do. That's not what I'm talking about. Man, this guy's basically Gandhi. He called for increased security at schools and parks and warned that these effing psychopaths are going to start targeting our kids, which is good advice. In the context of attacks across Europe on children by Islamists and anti-white left-wing extremists, increasing security seems like a good idea. There's no mention of race, race or targeting mosques or anything like that in his video that could be seen as stirring up racial hatred or incitement to violence. Compare Jamie's mild words to the left-wing establishment calls for decolonisation or to abolish whiteness. If Jamie's video is seen as inciting racist violence, then the left's anti-white rhetoric could certainly be seen as radicalising Axel Rudakabana, who openly stated that he wanted a white genocide. Now, Jamie did make a mistake when he suggested that the suspect was a first-generation migrant, not a second-generation migrant. Ooh, call the cops. But maybe the government should have released more information about the suspect, and then people wouldn't have had to guess. With Jamie innocent, I've got to ask how valid the other prosecutions made in the aftermath of the Southport riots are. Look at a similar case. In August 2024, Lee Joseph Dunn, a 51-year-old resident of Cumbria, was prosecuted after he shared 3 images on Facebook. One image showed men wielding knives in front of Britain's Parliament with a crying white child in a Union flag t-shirt captioned, "Coming to a town near you." Another depicted men disembarking from a boat onto Whitehaven Beach with the caption, "When it's on your turf, then what?" These posts were deemed grossly offensive and likely to incite racial hatred. Really? Under Labour's Operation Scatter, which sends small boat migrants to towns around the country, that's just a description of official government policy. And if anything, the picture of Islamists with knives in front of Parliament downplays the severity of the situation. Never mind knives being waved, there have been actual Islamist terror attacks in that location that have killed people. And David Amess, a Conservative MP from that very Parliament, was killed with a knife by Islamist Ali Harbi Ali. Despite this, Dunn pleaded guilty to sending offensive messages via a public electronic communications network and was sentenced to 8 weeks in prison. What was the difference in Jamie Michael's case? Well, Jamie got his own lawyer. He didn't rely on the state-appointed lawyer. Now, state-appointed lawyers are supposed to act in their clients' best interests, but did they in cases linked to Southport? Many of the solicitors seem to have advised their client to plead guilty. Was this the best advice? Was there any influence on the solicitors to get them to advise their clients this way? Unfortunately, for many people, the fast tracking through the courts meant that people didn't have time to arrange their own legal defence and had to go with the state-appointed solicitors. There were other factors pushing people to plead guilty. There was the suggestion of reduced sentences for guilty pleas, although that seems to have been a promise that was broken as soon as the plea was entered, as many people got ridiculously lengthy sentences, such as Lucy Connolly, who posted on social media calling for deportations and saying she wouldn't care if migrant hotels were set on fire, which isn't a nice thing to say, but she'd lost a child to a negligent migrant doctor and was clearly traumatised by seeing children killed, but none of this was taken into account. She was sentenced to more than 2.5 years in jail for this tweet. Another factor pushing people to plead guilty was that they were told that if they pleaded not guilty and took the case to trial, they'd be held on remand in prison until the trial, which could be months later.
Those that have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law. The police will be making arrests, individuals will be held on remand, charges will follow, and convictions will follow.
So many were caught in the lie of getting out straight away if they pleaded guilty, compared to months in jail if they insisted they were innocent. Then they pleaded guilty and got months in jail anyway. And for proof of political bias, just look how rioters on Labour's side are treated. Ricky Jones is a Labour politician, and he was caught on camera urging a mob of socialists to slash the throats of the far right, which at this point is a dog whistle for pretty much any white bloke who isn't a communist. Well, unlike people on the right, Ricky wasn't persuaded to plead guilty, and instead of being held on remand, he was bailed to return home, and his trial has been pushed back. Honestly, anyone would think that the system is quietly pushing his case down the road until they can let him off without anybody noticing. And many people on the right who were prosecuted for sharing misinformation were doing so because of the information vacuum. The argument is that the government couldn't release information because it might prejudice the trial, as if Axel Rudakabana would still be walking the streets if information had been released to the public, as if the judge would be like, "Oh, sorry, my hands are tied, we had to let him go because Susan in Warwickshire tweeted something about him to her 42 followers." No, the judge would just tell the jury to disregard what they read and only take into account the evidence in front of them, like judges have done millions of times before. And there was clear public interest in releasing more information, not just to quell people's anger, but because Axel Muganwa Rudakabana had been practicing the classic British Christian choir boy hobby of creating the terrorist bioweapon ricin in his bedroom. This is insanely deadly, and despite police saying the toxin presented a low risk to the public, it clearly didn't, because a neighbour of the Rudicabanas says it killed her cat. Caroline McDonald, who's 50, told The Telegraph that she was heartbroken when her cat Jojo died less than 24 hours after police found him in a forensics tent outside the Rudicabana's home. Mrs. McDonald said that nearly a month after officers first discovered the substance ricin, a plain-clothed officer warned her that Jojo kept going into the forensics tent and possibly got into the house. The next day, her pet was rushed to the vet after foaming from the mouth. He had a seizure and was then euthanized. And look, ricin isn't a low-risk substance. If the cat had brought even a fractionally tiny amount of ricin into someone's house, it could have been fatal. As little as a 10,000th of a gram could kill a toddler. This case shows how the state is using hate speech or racism laws to bring spurious prosecutions against people with opinions that it doesn't like. Jamie's solicitor explains this in an article. In the aftermath of the Southport riots, the UK government told the public to think before you post. The implied threat was that saying anything about the Southport attacks could result in a knock on the door from the police. Jamie did express an opinion after Southport, and he expressed it strongly. For doing so, he faced the possibility of years in prison. The punishment is the process in a lot of these cases. We need to scrap all hate crime laws. They're so vaguely worded, the state can pick and choose who to persecute. Also, the left are making a rod for their own back. Who's going to stop a right-wing government from directing these laws against people on the left when they get into power? And as for Jamie, thank God he's a free man and able to go back to his family and protect them. I don't think you can find many British people who think that Jamie Michael, a former Royal Marine, is more of a risk to our children in society than the deluded far-left morons who rule over us. And most of all, there's a question mark now over many of the convictions fast-tracked through the courts last summer. How many other people were reported to the police by left-wing politicians? Did the threat of being held on remand until their trial push people to plead guilty when they weren't? Was there any collusion between elements of the criminal justice system? Now, if you were one of these people, or if you work in the criminal justice system and you want to share any information about this, you can message me privately. There's a link below. And if you want to support me making these videos, sign up to my Patreon and join a community of people who are increasingly being shown to be on the right side of history. There's a link below to that as well. Anyway, thanks for listening. I've been Leo Kears. Bye. Bye bye.